The internet swears it knows everything about WNBA drama, who's beefing, who's thriving, who's falling off, and yet nobody saw this coming. A baby update from Sophie Cunningham that didn't play by the rules of the rumor mill, didn't chase clout, and somehow still froze timelines mid-scroll. Yes, that's the headline you tapped on. Sophie shared a deeply personal baby update, and Caitlin Clark was the first person she brought into that moment. That happened. And it left fans, teammates, and even the league's loudest critics doing a double take. Here's why it matters right now. In a season obsessed with box scores and body blows, we just got a reminder that the people inside those jerseys are living real lives with real milestones that don't pause for a shot clock. If you think this is just another gossip clip, you're in the wrong game, because this one reveals what the W is actually built on. Quick proof? The call wasn't about minutes or matchups. It wasn't a reshuffle, a trade, or a headline grab. It was life. And because you're here, here's the roadmap. We'll unpack what Sophie told Caitlin and why that call landed like a thunderclap. We'll crack open the strange, protective bubble around Sophie's love life mystery. We'll walk the long road of how she became the league's unapologetic spark plug. And we'll zoom out to the bigger stakes: motherhood, identity, and the fight to be seen as full humans in a sport that's finally getting the lights it deserves. Buckle up. Every few beats, I'll drop you a breadcrumb you'll want to circle back to. Because this story keeps opening doors. Let's start with the aftershock, not the moment itself. The reaction. Usually, personal news in pro sports tears it seems. Factions in the locker room, wild think pieces, manufactured chaos. Not here. What happened instead felt like a team huddle that kept growing until it wrapped around the entire league. Rivals. Women who hammer each other on screens and chase each other off the three-point line. Sent love first, question second. Teammates didn't whisper. They laughed, hugged, and did what teammates do when a new chapter knocks. They made space. Fans, oh, the fans went from "what did she say" to "we're with you" faster than a transition break. And if you listen closely, buried under the celebratory noise is a tone you don't always hear in men's sports. Permission. Permission to be more than what the job demands. Hold that word, permission, because we'll come back to it when we talk about expectations versus reality. But to understand why this rang like a bell, we have to press rewind and go to the quiet place where it started. A phone call. Not a press conference, not a live, not a carefully lit reveal. A call. On one end, Sophie Cunningham. The one who plays like every possession owes her money. The one who has built a career on edge and endurance. On the other end, Caitlin Clark, the lightning rod rookie, the headline magnet, the one people say is dragging entire audiences into arenas on name recognition alone. There's a version of this scene that the internet writes for you. Jealousy, weird energy, a veteran side-eyeing the new kid's stardom. That's the fanfiction version. The real version? Friendship, respect. The veteran who's done the hard miles, trusting the newcomer who's sprinting into a headwind of cameras. Sophie didn't call a brand. She called a person. And the way Caitlin answered, no face of the league tone, no media polish, just a friend, says more than any stat graphic ever could. In a sport where most of the time you're told to be a story, these two chose to be human first. Now, I know what you're thinking. A baby update? From where? Because the algorithm thinks it knows Sophie's love life and, newsflash, it doesn't. This is a player who will post a behind-the-scenes locker room grin, crack a joke that makes the whole bench lean over, drop a clip that screams competitor, and yet when it comes to romance, she slams the door so fast the hinges rattle. No tagged hand-holding soft launches. No spoiler captions. Years back, fans squinted at a photo, circled a face, and thought they'd decoded the storyline. Then the trail went cold by design. That's not an accident. That's control. That's a woman deciding the part of her life the public doesn't get to puppeteer. And that's the part that made this moment even more seismic. She didn't owe anyone an update. She chose to share it, selectively, personally, with someone who would hold it like it mattered. Which, of course, it does. Let's value loop that. Context, a league where every glance becomes a take, every laugh becomes a theory, every 2-second clip becomes an indictment. Application, Sophie communicating on her terms with someone she trusts is a masterclass in boundary setting. Framing, this is the expectation versus reality split we never talk about. Expectation says athletes owe the public a 24/7 documentary. Reality says they owe their souls to no one. Let's throw a pattern interrupt here. Think about the last time a personal reveal in sports made you feel good instead of nosy. Hard to name, right? That's the anomaly we're sitting in. It's not sanitized, and it's not scandalized. It's simply shared. That's why it's sticking to people that we have to talk about who Sophie is to make sense of why this hits different. She didn't enter this league with a velvet rope rolled out. She clawed her way in with a kind of voltage that either wins you diehard fans or lifelong haters. At Missouri, she built a reputation for stacking 20-point nights and walking into hostile arenas like they were just louder living rooms. She was the kind of college star who turned simple possessions into theater, hands on knees, fire in the eyes, daring you to be the one who flinches first. Then came the pros, where the glamour filter falls off real quick. She wasn't anointed. She was auditioning. And yet within a couple of seasons, she'd lodged herself into the league's bloodstream. Big shots, bigger energy, a willingness to be the spark when the room felt flat. Add one more trait that doesn't show up on spreadsheets. She's real. No corporate safe quotes, no robot answers. If she's struggling, she says it without begging for pity. If she's soaring, she smiles without making it a billboard. That authenticity is currency. And she spends it wisely. Now imagine a person like that who keeps the most tender things under lock and key, deciding to pick up the phone. I've got news. Not about rotations, not about a postseason push. About life. About a baby in her world, and a chapter that basketball has to share space with. Here's where the second best point becomes the bridge to the strongest. The choice of confidant. Why Caitlin? Why the rookie who landed in the league like a singer, who skipped open mics and went straight to arenas? Because the pressure cooker Caitlin lives in today is a close cousin to the one Sophie's stared down for years. Different sides of the same wall. There's a respect that grows between the spectacle and the survivor, the spotlight and the scrapper, that outsiders never fully get. People assumed rival. Reality delivered ally. Mini cliffhanger. Hold on to that word, ally, because it's about to widen into something bigger than two names that Let's Talk fan confusion, because it was real. When the baby news ricocheted through group chats, a chunk of the internet threw its hands up. Wait, what? With who? When? That's what happens when a public figure refuses to let her worth be measured by her access. For years, people tried to solve Sophie's personal life like it was a puzzle they bought and therefore owned. Guess what? You don't own it. What you saw instead were glimpses. Team dinners, locker room laughter, community work, faith conversations that gave you character without handing you coordinates. Fans projected. Media filled blanks with neon arrows. And the person at the center kept choosing the off switch. You can call that coy. I call it skilled. Because when the moment came, the reveal wasn't performative. It was intimate. It wasn't content. It was connection. Value loop it again. Context. A culture that confuses visibility with vulnerability. Application. A controlled reveal interrupts that culture and teaches it a better language. Framing. The larger story is about agency. Who gets to narrate women's lives in sports? The answer, increasingly, is the women themselves. That's progress. That's also a threat to the parts of the media machine that depend on turning human lives into cliffhangers minus consent. Now, the strongest point, the one that turns this from a nice moment into a mirror for the league. Think about how often we reduce women's sports to 3 buckets. Can they sell tickets? Can they dunk? Can they behave? That's the stale trifecta lobbed like a hacky joke on bad panels. And then something like this happens, and it obliterates the frame. Because the question becomes not whether women athletes can compete like men, but whether the sports world can grow up and allow them to be whole. The WNBA has always had a secret weapon: community. It doesn't just market stars, it raises them. It doesn't just package storylines, it protects the people living them.